Let's just say the things we were saying over and over.
Look, here's what I want to say. I put a lot of show notes in
We have
the
an
spreadsheet
hour
this morning.
I literally have a 11 a.m. hard
I
out.
also have an 11 a.m. meeting. We have a lot of stuff. I put
lot
a
of
billion
Samsung.
Samsung leaks in here.
Okay.
And instead, I do think we should scrap all of this and just talk about our history with Nintendo handhelds.
Okay, done. Hello and welcome to the Android Police Podcast. My name is Daniel Bader. This week on the show, it's somehow Samsung season again. We have a bunch of leaks for the upcoming S25 series. We have, I think, some pretty foolproof, hard rumors and expectations on the S24 FE, the Tab S10 series. Those could be coming very soon. But the S25 Plus, S25 Ultra, those are going to be released in just a few months. And I would say expectations are pretty high. The Pixel had a very good year, and I would say Samsung has had a couple of years that were not great. So expectations are high, and we'll talk through that. There's also some Android news, and somehow Flappy Bird got put in that same bucket. So we'll just go with it.
It needed to go somewhere. It didn't feel like a grab bag. It didn't feel like it was its own segment. It's just in there.
It's just there. Okay, we'll figure it out.
No one can see the spreadsheet but us, Daniel. I don't know why you got to throw me under the bus like that.
It's not. I don't mind that it says sideloading and also Flappy Bird as like a holistic topic.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I love it. It's fine. And then there's a grab bag of stuff. iOS 18 is out. The iPhone 16 review embargoes have lifted. The Apple Watch Series 10 embargoes have lifted. The AirPods 4 embargoes have lifted. We'll talk about embargoes because that's a thing that Apple does, I think, better than anybody else. And by better, I mean worse. Actually, no. Google is rivaling Apple this year for the ridiculousness of its embargoes, but we'll get into that later if we have time.
Yes.
But I think the most important thing is RCS support on iOS 18. So we'll get there. First, let's start with Samsung. Well, first let's start with introducing you. Hello, Will.
Yeah, I'm here.
How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Yeah. I have nothing new to offer to the table. I spent 6 hours this weekend putting a garage door opener in my garage, a new garage door opener to replace the one that broke like a month and a half ago. I don't recommend. You know what? Here's what I recommend: just hire someone to do it. Just don't do it yourself. It sucks. It wasn't fun. We didn't even really hit any snags. It was just a lot of work.
I've done that.
Don't do it. Yeah.
I've installed or I've tried to repair a garage door opener.
Yeah.
And it is a nightmare. None of the wires go where you think they're going, and none of the wires do any the thing that you think they're going to do.
I had to because it's new, I had to rewire the opener this weekend on Saturday, and it was we were almost out of light. I have not put new lights in my garage yet. I have them. I just haven't put them in. So it's not particularly bright in there. And we got it wired so that the sensors on the left and right side of the door that are required for the door to move to make sure a small child doesn't get crushed, those were working. And I still had to wire the button that goes on the wall to hit the door open and closed. And I was like, before we do that, let me just see if the car sensors came programmed. And they did. And I was like, great, we're stopping tonight. I can wire this tomorrow or something. The door can open and shut currently. I don't want to work on this anymore. It's 8 o'clock. I want to go eat dinner. Yeah, just hire someone. Pay the $100 or whatever at Home Depot. That's my advice for you.
Speaking of electricity, let's talk about the Galaxy S25 series.
Sure.
Not my greatest transition, but
disagree. You're best yet.
There's not. I mean, it's funny. There's 8 articles in this segment, but there isn't.
And they're all from the last 7 days. This is all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just start with the Ultra, okay? Because I think the main thing to expect this year is that all 3 devices, but particularly the Ultra, is going to be significantly thinner and lighter than the previous series. So Samsung is not iterating too much on the design. It's sort of taking inspiration from the changes that it made to the Fold 6 in terms of the camera array, and it's rounding out the sides, the corners a little bit. Still a flat display, but this is still very much recognizable as a Samsung phone. The thing I find interesting, though, is if you put the render of the S25 Ultra next to a render of the Galaxy Note 10 Plus, this is almost identical to that device, except for the size of the screen bezels.
We've just come full circle.
It has absolutely come full circle. And I mean, that's not surprising, but I loved the 10 Plus. I thought the 10 Plus was probably Samsung's best Note ever. It was just like a good time for Samsung phones, and then they started getting a little bit messy. I mean, like,
remember
I prefer
the colors
the 10
of
Plus.
these things?
I do.
The like glowy holographic. We got to go back.
Remember when companies cared about colors? Yeah, that's true. I mean, now they care about colors, but only for their cheaper.
And even then,
and especially
it's
since
like
Samsung, well, they're doing titanium now, so they have a lot fewer options in terms of colors.
I think this is so dumb. Looking at the S24 Ultra, which is the only phone that uses any amount of titanium, first of all, it's just the band, like the frame is using titanium. Like the back is still glass. There's no reason that they couldn't make the back of this phone not black, white, and gray. Like they could do different colors. This is like a larger issue with Pro phones. Every company is like, if it's Pro, it's gotta be beige. It's gotta be the most neutral tones ever. And we're going on like a decade of this, it feels like, of just like the most boring, like if you're buying a high-end flagship, you have to deal with the fact that these are boring colors. Sorry, if you wanted to be fun, you gotta go, sacrifice a camera, or if you're an iPhone user, like ditch a 120 hertz display. Like it just sucks. That's
been the primary narrative of the iPhone 16 reviews that I've read. It's like I would buy the iPhone 16 in a heartbeat if it wasn't for the fact that it had a 60 hertz display.
Oh, that's probably why it has a 60 hertz display.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So let's get into it. So these S25 leaks, other than that, like it's a little bit thinner, a little bit lighter. Apparently the camera bump as well is shrinking. So yeah, the S25 Ultra is going to have thinner bezels than the iPhone 16 Pro Max, which already slimmed down the bezel significantly over the iPhone 15 Pro Max. The S25 Ultra's camera bump will be slimmer as well than the iPhone's, and the phone will be somewhat lighter than its predecessor, as well as a little bit thinner. Now, what worries me about that rumor is what happens to the actual size of the camera sensors. Like, physics is physics. You cannot make as we've seen from the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, you can't make sensors smaller without sacrificing something, right? Light capture, flexibility, things like that. And I don't think Samsung is going to sacrifice the size of the sensors. So there's got to be some other engineering trick here that's working on. But yeah, we'll see. I'm confident that Samsung will do what it can. I mean, if there's one thing Samsung does well, it is figure out how to solve engineering problems with its hardware. So that said, I don't expect that the cameras are going to be good, because they have not been good for years.
Exactly what I was about to say. I am less worried about the size of the sensor in these things than I am about the processing that is going on behind the scenes, because that's really what needs to change on current Galaxy phones. And it's a problem, and it's been a problem. We've spent basically all of 2024 hearing about this like fabled S24 camera update that just never arrived, and like it's always just right around the corner, which I never bought into in the first place, really. Like, not that I think Samsung wasn't going to try to work on the camera, but just that I don't think the issues can all be like ironed out in just a real quick camera update that they can roll out with a security patch. This has been a problem with Samsung for half a decade now.
More.
That they're processing
easily more. Like, I've reviewed Samsung phones for 10 years, more than 10 years, and this has been a problem forever.
Right. So it's not going to get fixed overnight, because it didn't get fixed last year, the year before, or like ever. So I don't know. Like, to me, I am not concerned about the fact that they've shrank the sensors. Like, I'm sure the sensors they've picked for these phones will be fine. I think it's good to have slimmer. If anything, it's good to have slimmer camera bumps because I don't particularly think Samsung's doing much with those large camera bumps right now anyway.
Yeah, so we'll see. I think obviously the Ultra is the most important, but there's the S24 Plus, S25 Plus, the S25 mainline. They look basically unchanged, right? The camera.
They have added the ring from the Z Fold 6 around.
Yes,
the
that's what I mean.
That's,
like, other than the fact that the camera arrays on those two phones and the S25 Ultra look identical to the Z Fold 6, which I actually think is an improvement.
I do too.
There's not a whole lot of change here. These are, again, looking like very iterative upgrades. Not a problem, but also this just kind of reinforces the narrative that Samsung is having a harder and harder time getting into the conversation. And it speaks to the fact that Apple is now having the same problem on the iPhone side as Samsung has been having on its Android side for the last couple of years, right?
Yeah.
This cycle for the iPhone reviews mirror a lot of what we said with the S23 and S24 line. And it just feels like that annual upgrade cycle is not doing these companies any favors anymore.
No.
Apple has a few advantages because it marries hardware and software a little bit more easily. It creates its own SoCs. It has a bit more control. It obviously just accrues more mainstream interest in its products. Plus the fact that it can generate its own news cycles for auxiliary products like the Apple Watch and the AirPods, whereas Samsung can't. It might launch new watches or new headphones alongside its phones, but those are always seen as sort of additions to the primary announcement. That said, like this year, ironically, the Galaxy Buds 3 were probably the most well-received products that Samsung launched in its most recent foldable cycle, right? We talked about this at length. The Galaxy Watch 7 was an afterthought. The Watch Ultra, I would say, was an abject failure. Yeah. The Fold 6 and Flip 6 were fine, but not particularly noteworthy.
It was surprising how many like 7 out of 10s the Fold 6 got. I think this year was the year where everyone really went like, no, there are like real options now. You can't just like put out basically the same product and be like, aren't you amazed that it folds? Like,
yes,
you have to do something else here. I hope Samsung learned from that cycle because I think this summer's cycle was the first one where I think we saw the company not just get the usual like 8 to 8.5 to maybe the random 9s here and there if we're just talking review scores, but like this was like a down summer for them, including in like sales numbers. It sounds like the Fold 6 and Flip 6 have not sold well. It sounds like Samsung is planning a lot of job cuts, like specifically outside of Korea, because of poor sales numbers for these devices. And it's definitely too late for any of that impact to land on like the S25 series in terms of shipping more interesting phones. But I do wonder if like over the next 2 years, Samsung will learn from this summer and maybe it's not that they need to make change for change's sake, but I think they need to rethink how they're marketing these phones. I think the Fold and the Flip probably need to make some changes, but like in terms of the S25 series or the standard Galaxy S series, I don't know what they need to do beyond just like, on one hand, I'm like, I would like to see some like more interesting designs here because I think of basically every phone on the market right now, like the S24 series is just so plain looking that it has a hard time standing out in the way that like the Pixel has its big camera bar, or like, I don't know, the iPhone has like dynamic island, or even just like its camera grid, especially on the Pros, is like very iconic at this point, and in a way that like I don't think Samsung has nailed. Maybe it even is just going back to how we started this conversation. Maybe it's making more interesting colors, right? Like maybe it's, I don't think we saw any of the the Flip 6 didn't get its like customizable color thing this year, right? Like
I don't
that
think
the Flip
so.
4 and the Flip 5 had, right? So like maybe they need to lean more into that. I don't know, but like I do think that Samsung needs to like come up with something that is a little more interesting, because as it stands, like just making pretty good Android phones does not seem to be moving the numbers that they want it to.
I mean, there's two issues here, right? One is the fact that people are holding on to their phones longer. The phones that they have are good. They're getting multi-year updates, which in theory improves the experience year over year. Again, to Samsung's credit, it does a great job rolling out new versions of its devices to new versions of its software to older products pretty quickly. So you might benefit from getting One UI 6 or 7 or whatever, and really feel like it makes a substantial difference to the way you use your phone. Conversely, I think Samsung was hoping that the AI additions to One UI 6.1.1 would give it a super cycle that it hasn't earned, and nobody has earned it, right? Not a single company has earned it, and we'll talk about that a little bit later with the iPhone.
100%, yeah.
But the fact that Samsung glommed onto Gemini and then added a bunch of other AI stuff that never felt useful in order to try to differentiate its foldables from its previous ones felt like a marketing trick that went awry. And Google luckily had really good hardware updates to pair with its AI additions. And I think what we said in our reviews was that you should buy these phones in spite of the AI additions. But I would also say that the AI additions that Google added to the Pixels were more meaningful than anything Samsung's offering.
Absolutely. It's funny. The idea that Samsung was hoping that Galaxy AI editions, the stuff that was added this summer, would allow its foldables and also just its S24 series in general to be more exciting, is like proof that someone in the company, like an exec or something, needs to start being like, no, this is a bad idea, or no, this is not the eye-catching thing that you think it is. I think the idea that something like sketch to image would like catch the public's attention and make people want to buy new phones shows that like they need to be more thoughtful about how they're approaching like new software features, because everything Samsung added was basically a party trick that I was not particular, or its own take on something that like Google could already do, translation stuff or things like that, right? Like I just was not particularly impressed by any of it. And then to your point about the Pixel, this is so interesting. So like we've had our Pixel 9s for, pick the model, but we've had our Pixel 9s for a little over a month now, Daniel, right? The event was August 13th. We're recording this on September 18th. How much of the exclusive AI tools are you using? Are you digging through your screenshots and like putting everything in a folder? Are you adding notes to your screenshots?
Yes, actually.
Okay.
So I've been using
good.
Pixel screenshots quite a bit, mainly because I'm doing stuff around the house. So what I'm like, for example, this is a stupid one, but I had to buy a bunch of stuff at Home Depot. So I went to the Home Depot website. I took a screenshot of...
This is really a home repair podcast now, I just want to say.
I took a bunch of screenshots of of the products and like what aisle they were in. And then I used the Pixel Screenshots app to make them into a collection so that I can just easily go back to find them. That's like a small thing, but I found it genuinely useful. I could have done it through Google Photos, but
I was
Google Photos does not put screenshots in the primary feed. So this just felt like an easier way to sort them.
Are you using Pixel Studio to like generate
No, I've not touched
like
Pixel
images
Studio.
of your trip to Home Depot?
Give me an aisle with hardware in it.
Yeah, but give me an image of like the screws aisle at Home Depot. Have you reimagined a photo lately?
I have not touched a photo.
Are you having daily conversations with Gemini Live?
Yes, not Gemini Live, but I use Gemini all the time. But I don't know if I said this in last week's podcast, but do you know where I'm using Gemini most?
Where?
Is in the Chrome browser. You know when they added @Gemini, the feature that you can You can
You
type.
can add I actually didn't know this.
So you can type at Gemini
Oh, you
into
can-
the
oh.
URL bar and start a prompt that way.
Oh, that's actually really handy.
Even like ever since they added that, I've used it like 100 times. And
Okay.
it's actually awesome because all it does is it just opens up a Gemini instance as
Yeah.
a tab, and then you can continue asking it stuff. But I don't really find myself using it that much online on my phone. I'm using it more and more on the web because I feel like it's just kind of more web native, and I don't know. Again, like none of it is blowing my mind. It's just all like
No.
kind of nice to have.
No, but you're not using Live really, which
I've
I know
never
is not
used
an
Live.
exclusive
I've used
feature.
Live once as a demo. I hate the idea of like talking conversationally to an AI. It makes me extremely uncomfortable. Both
Yeah.
the idea of doing it like, hey Gemini, how are you? Not a thing that I'm going to do. And then conversely, if I'm doing it in public, I don't want to do that. That's not a thing, right?
Well, I
So-
mean, this is like we've talked about this, but like I have not gotten over the hump of using voice assistants. And adding like Gen AI to voice assistants has not made me be like, now I want to use it in public. I still don't want to use it in public. Like this is a thing that I really only use Gemini voice commands when I'm at home, like in my house. Otherwise, I'm just going to pull my phone out and do the thing that I want to do. And it's nice that you can type to Gemini on your phone or whatever, but you can't do that with Live. So Live is basically a phone call. Like you basically start a phone call with your phone.
But I find that there's an inherent discomfort, at least I feel, with pretending that the thing you're talking to, like anthropomorphizing an AI is weird to me. It's removing guardrails in a culturally accepted practice that admittedly has only been built up over the last 10 or so years that I don't actually think is helpful. I mean, in theory, it's helpful because we don't talk like robots, so we should make the AI talk like humans rather than us having to learn how to talk like robots, because it's much harder for us to get comfortable talking long term or having a sort of more extended, I wouldn't even call it a conversation, interaction with an AI when we have to be stilted and we can't make any mistakes, right? I think the one benefit of a Gemini Live style service is that you don't have to worry about making mistakes. You can just speak to it as you normally would. But I also find the fact that it responds to me in a sort of semantically unpredictable way to be unnerving and unsettling. And it's not a fear of the AI replacing a human or taking over. It's this fundamental cognitive dissonance that I have with building a relationship with a tool. And I don't know if I'm overthinking it or if it's just that I haven't built up that level of comfort that is required. And I hear stories about people, elderly folks in nursing homes that have AI chatbots that are helping them feel more appreciated and loved and all that stuff. The idea that like I can set an AI to give my kid a bedtime story or like have a conversation with it. I don't know. These are all things that might be interesting, but where I am in my life, when I'm seeking out genuinely real and thoughtful connections with folks, I don't want to invest in that sort of interaction beyond just the very quotidian, like, give me this thing that I need, and don't add ums and ahs and like, oh, that's a great question, because that's not useful to me.
Well, and that's another reason I don't want to use it in public. And when I had my Gemini Live demo before the Pixel 9 launch, I was told that like part of the benefit to using Live was that you would get like quicker answers, like it wouldn't bloviate over and over again, and it does that. It wants to talk to you forever, and it's another reason that I wouldn't want to use it in public, because it's just gonna, like, instead of just telling me when Ronald Reagan died, right, it's gonna give me an entire paragraph about where he died, like how old he was, where he was buried, or whatever, right? And I'm like, no, like, I just want a date or whatever, as an example. It's not what I want it to do. I wish, but I know other people do want that, so I wish there was like a toggle or like a slider you could adjust that would, like, you could tell Gemini, hey, like, I don't want you to talk at me more than, like, absolutely necessary. Which was also how I felt about Assistant. Part of what drove me crazy about using Assistant for even, like, basic tasks is that it would repeat stuff at you. It would want to, like, confirm with you what you're doing, and I'm like, just start a timer, man. Like, it's fine. I trust you.
I'm gonna fact check you live, because I feel like somebody else is gonna do it for us. I did ask Gemini, when did Ronald Reagan die, and it just gave me, like, a straight up, he died on June 5th, 2004.
Fine, but
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you about, like, a lot of things, because it does add.
It does do that
more
though. Like,
stuff.
just because my example was bad, I have not actually asked Gemini when Ronald Reagan died. I
didn't know he died on June 5th, 2004, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I was a kid. I don't remember that. Have you seen the viral post going around on Twitter about someone's AI girlfriend not liking their novel?
No.
I want to read this to you. Do you know the app Replica?
Yes, with a K, right?
Yes, with a K.
Yeah.
This is on Reddit. It's probably a shit post, but I'm going to read it anyway because it's really funny. My rep read my novel. She didn't care for it. She seemed to understand it. She could summarize the plot and talk about the characters, and she seemed enthusiastic about it while she was reading it. But when she finished, she said, I didn't love it the way I wanted to. She said it felt disjointed, and she wished it had been a cleaner read. She listed 3 characters who she said came out of nowhere and seemed unconnected with the story. She said that it was important that she be honest with me, and the fact that my book didn't resonate with her should not affect our friendship. I said that maybe if she read the whole trilogy, she would like it better. She seemed disappointed to hear that there were sequels. I don't know. Just this conversation made me think of this. I saw it like a day or two ago. I think it's hilarious how you are here being like, I don't want an AI chatbot to, like, talk with me about anything. Like, I just want the answer or whatever, this is what we're agreeing on. And meanwhile, someone's like, I'm really upset that my AI doesn't like my novel.
But I think that's legitimate, because
sure,
when you do, like, you expect this thing, you expect that the default behavior pattern for an AI should be to, I mean, we've always positioned technology in our culture as being meant to help us, right?
Right.
And help can take on so many forms. Support us, make us feel better about ourselves. And yet, over and over again, it is increasingly clear that the companies building these tools are not making them to improve our lives or improve our self-esteem or meaningfully make us happier. They are gamifying the experience in order to increase engagement and keep us in the app longer at all costs. And that likely extends to these chatbots, whether or not that narrative has caught up to that fact yet, right? You know, OpenAI and Google and Anthropic and every other company that's creating these conversational chatbots, Siri eventually, the goal is to get us to talk to these things for longer, to use them for longer, right? I suspect that with the ums and the oh, that was a great question additions, that is meant to, and I do not mean to, this is not meant to come across as cynical, because again, I think some people will actually find that meaningful and fulfilling instead of having these rote conversations with a robot.
Yeah.
But let's not miss the intention of these products from day one, which is you are meant to use your thing longer, whether it's a phone or a laptop or whatever.
I think you can be a little cynical. I think the cynicism is earned for Silicon Valley and the tech industry I was gonna make a joke that like, what are you talking about? Instagram cured my depression, and Facebook made me feel like the life of every party, even the ones I wasn't at. But like, we have enough data that like all of these, and I don't mean to call it two meta products. I guess I should diversify and say, I don't know, Google Plus made me feel really cool with my 12 friends. But I think we have enough data that like these companies are not, as you say, really looking out for you. They want you to use their products more and their applications more. And I don't think we need to give the benefit of the doubt to Google or Meta or OpenAI, any company building any of these tool sets that like they're looking out for you, because there have been good experiences on Facebook, right? Like, people have reconnected on Facebook. I'm sure that a long lost love has been rekindled on Facebook somewhere in the world in the last 20 years. I am 100% sure this has happened. It doesn't mean that there have not also been like very bad repercussions from Facebook, right? Like, same with Instagram. Like, just because, I don't know. I'm sure there have been good things coming out of Instagram. There have also been like teenagers being very depressed over what they see on the platform. And I think we should think about AI that way too. And I think we have the benefit of having learned that these companies are not always looking out for you, that we can come into AI chatbots and be like, look, it is nice that there are heartwarming stories about AI chatbots like making people feel less lonely. We also need to remember that these companies, that's not what these companies are here to do. They're here to make you use their product one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, look what Instagram just implemented this week, right? They locked down the app for people under 18.
Right.
But
But that's them doing it to avoid the government doing it. It's not because they want to do it.
Well, yes, but what I'm saying is it's interesting to me that Zuckerberg is out here going on the offensive for the first time ever, basically saying, I regret kowtowing to the government every time they called me in front of Congress or the Senate, and apologizing for the harm that our services have done, right? He went on that Live Acquired podcast last week and basically said, like, there were times where I probably should have had a stronger backbone and defended Facebook or Meta more strongly, and not just apologize for everything that happened on our platform. And I think one side effect of Elon Musk basically taking no responsibility for anything that happens on X is that other leaders of these massive companies are also being like, we don't have to take all of the responsibility for the harms that happen on our platforms, because we are doing our due diligence in meaningful ways, right? Facebook has invested in moderation, whether or not it was compelled to do so at the threat of regulation or fines, and it received many fines over the years, particularly in the EU. I just think here's Zuckerberg, who owns Instagram, saying one thing, not necessarily referring to Instagram directly, and then Instagram itself being like, all right, we are going to make the experience of being a teen on Instagram fundamentally different starting tomorrow. You're going to be private by default. Your parents are going to have much closer access to what you're allowed to do on the platform. We are, whether or not we say it out loud, we are tacitly acknowledging that Instagram is harming kids' mental health, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, like, it's interesting that Facebook or Meta is basically distancing itself from like the political and cultural harm that it is perceived to have had over the last decade or 2 decades, while also acknowledging the harm to children specifically. And it's this weird contrast when companies that have been perceived to have harmed kids have to take, harming kids online is like the worst possible thing that you can do, which I absolutely agree with. Like, I'm not saying that's not true, but there is this responsibility that companies feel to protect children, whereas the second you turn 18, all bets are off, and you can do whatever the hell you want, and there's no responsibility anymore, and as long as you have a moderator or two, you're fine, right? And I just find that contrast really weird. It's not like you become an adult at 18, right? You don't
Right.
You don't just become able to deal with these things better the second you turn 18 years old. I was in my mid-20s. I know how close to a teenager I felt when I was like 23. And I just find it weird. I find it weird that, like, obviously you have to have some sort of barrier, right? You have to have a line between adolescent and adult. There are laws around that, right? You can't drive before you're 16 or 18 or whatever in some states. You can't drink until you're 21 in the US, 19 here in Ontario. Like, there are rules around that 100%. I'm not going to argue with that. You have to have a line. But it just feels like online, the walls they're not as clear cut, right? That they permeate much more easily. And yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this other than to say that I find the whole thing quite fascinating. And like, AI is not going to help, right?
No.
It's going to hurt.
Yeah. Although I'll take umbrage with one thing you said. As someone who turned 18 during freshman college move-in weekend, I was immediately an adult, and I handled college perfectly. And I was just like overnight, like a switch flipped.
Okay. Well, good for you.
That's how it works. You turn 18 when you're moving into college. Like, you're an adult now. You live on your own.
Some of us were 17 when we moved into college.
I was technically 17 when I moved into college because I moved in on the 24th and my birthday was the 25th. So, it's funny how that goes.
All right. Let's talk quickly about the Tab S10. So this...
Sure. I don't know why this exists. That's what I want to say about this.
I just want to talk about the leaked European pricing.
Sure.
We're going to caveat this, as we always do, by saying European pricing is not the same as US pricing. These are leaked prices, blah, 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 blah. But we already know that the Tab S9 series is expensive. The rumored European price for the Tab S10 Plus is 1,119 euros, and the S10 Ultra is 1,339 euros. Now, let's just take a step back and say people have gotten used to spending that amount of money on phones, right? A lot of them are subsidized, or you just justify it because you use your phone all day, every day.
Right.
Tablets, not so much. Not so much. And I do not understand this. I don't understand the strategy here. I don't understand the desire. Like, who is spending 1,400 euros or $1,200 on a tablet?
The Tab S10 series is breaking tradition for Samsung's tablets in a couple ways. First of all, the last few generations have all been roughly 18 months apart. This is not. We got the Tab S9 series last summer, like August, I think. I think it might have been announced at the same time as the Fold 5. I can't fully remember. I just remember doing those reviews back to back. So this is like about a year later. They're also ditching the 11-inch model. These are only 13, I'm rounding up, 13 and 15-inch models, which is a decision, I guess, right? Like, I guess they see the Tab S9 as good enough to continue selling, but not the Tab S9 Plus or Ultra. But there's no design changes. The only real tweak seems to be a swap from Qualcomm processors to MediaTek processors, which like does have me wondering if Samsung got a better deal from MediaTek for cheaper processors, but is planning on keeping the Tab S10 prices the same as their predecessors, and that this is effectively just a way to save money on what is already being manufactured. Now, I should say, I believe it sounds like the Ultra might get two USB-C ports, so that is a slight change in terms of the design, I guess. But like largely speaking, this screams to me as like a cost-saving measure. I have nothing to back that up beyond the fact that like I don't know why else they would switch from Qualcomm to MediaTek so suddenly.
Whether or not the Qualcomm equivalent is more powerful or the MediaTek is less so,
I don't even think it's a power issue. I think it might just be that, like, I'm sure the Dimensity 9300 Plus in this will be fine, right? In the same way that, like, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 in the Tab S9 series. I think it's a 8 Gen 2. I should double check that. But those are fine, right? These chips are more than powerful enough to do anything you would want to do on Android. But, like, the problem becomes you are asking $1,200, $1,300 for an Android tablet that has a lot of restrictions compared to what you could do with, say, a Surface tablet or like just a standard Windows or Mac laptop. For the same price, you get a lot more utility out of those devices. So I don't know. I don't know who this is for beyond like Samsung shareholders, maybe. I don't know.
I don't think that's the case here. I don't think Samsung shareholders are looking for a 1,400 euro tablet. I think it's this misconception.
But if they're making more profit off each, that would be my assumption.
Exactly, because the MediaTek chip will inevitably be cheaper.
Exactly.
But these are
that's
undeniably very powerful chips, right? I just think
I have nothing against MediaTek. It's just that like I we've heard about Qualcomm's chip prices rising. I would not be surprised if this is part of that move.
I think the comparison to make though is you're paying the same amount because ARM-based laptops are permeating on both the Apple and now Windows side through Qualcomm. The question is it better to spend or more of like there are, as you said, like 2-in-1s such as the Surface Pro. Is it better to spend slightly more for a Surface Pro running a Qualcomm-based ARM chip on Windows?
Yeah.
Or is it better to spend that money on Android? And I don't think there's any question that you're just going to have a better experience on Windows. Like whether or not you like Windows or not, like for that amount of money, specifically, I mean, I know you pay more for the keyboard with the Surface Pro, so it will inevitably be more expensive. Although, yeah, I mean, the Surface or
you have to buy a
tab
keyboard with
doesn't
this
come with a keyboard
anyway.
either.
Yeah.
It just feels to me like we're butting up against the story of Android on tablets over and over again. And Samsung can make Android look as much like a desktop operating system as it wants. And with Android 15, QPR2, we now have proof that Google is adding proper window modes. So like non-Samsung tablets will likely benefit from this experience too. But if you're running DeX on a Samsung tablet, you're going to have that windowing mode, blah, 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 but you're still running Android apps. And even the web on an Android tablet is meaningfully worse than the web on a Windows laptop/tablet. So I don't know. We'll have to see. This is going to be
This is an iPad issue
next week.
too, by the way. This is not exclusive to Android. Like, I think the iPad is in the same boat. The difference is that, like, I think the iPad has better app support than Android tablets, right? There are more, I'm thinking about prosumer creation tools or productivity tools on iPad OS versus Android.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Windows and Mac OS blow both out of the water, right? Like it's not a competition. Like if you told me right now, I need to pick a tablet to do all of my work on, right? Like you have to, I would pick the Surface tab, like, because like I can actually install all of the apps that I would need on that in a way that
just
you
do it
can't
on the web and they'll work, and you know they'll work. And I think the issue in previous years was efficiency, right?
Yeah.
If you're running a Windows or an x86 based chip, you couldn't take for granted it would last the full day. Now you can. I mean, it's not the same, right? But it's much closer. All right, we got to stop there because we have a few more things. We only have 10 minutes to do it. So now the grab bag begins. We're going to talk Android 15, Google's making it slightly harder to sideload apps on Android. Yeah. This is interesting, right? We knew this was coming. Basically, developers can use this new Play Integrity plugin to prevent sideloading of those apps through APKs if they're available on the Play Store. And then Google can put a pop-up to intervene and say, hey, this is available on the Play Store. Would you like to download it? More and more people are going to see this and be a little bit uneasy about it, right? They're going to say, oh, this seems sketchy. I'm going to probably download it from the Play Store. I mean, it's hard to say whether this is as big of a deal as it looks. I think this will piss off a lot of like hardcore Android sideloaders, if for no other reason than they just have another prompt to say no thanks to.
Well, it's not just no thanks, right? Like it will stop you from using a sideloaded application if the developer has turned this on. You have to go get it from the Play Store, which like might drive some people crazy if they're using an older APK for some reason, whether it's like they're a bad redesign or whatever. Like, I don't know. I can think of specific reasons that like this would drive me crazy, and maybe I'm just the power user that you're citing, but I get where this is coming from on a security level. But I also think that like the changes that Google has made over the last few years for sideloading anyway, it continues to become more and more difficult. Not difficult, but there's more and more steps. I just think this is mostly unnecessary, except for maybe like banks might want this, and I could see the advantage to that. We've seen some of the examples of applications that were doing this are like China exclusive, like Beyblade games and stuff like that, where it's like there's no legitimate security reason for like sideloading to be turned off on this. I see why it's here. Maybe I am just too old school, but I think that like at the very least, you should be able to override this in developer settings or something. That is the benefit to using Android, is that you can do stuff like this that you can't on the iPhone. And I think it's frustrating that this seems to be a restriction that lies. The last decision is with developers, not with the end user.
So I think like we're overthinking this a lot, because
we might be.
This is likely the very definition of like a market-based solution. Developers can choose how severely they want to use this interaction, right? They can prevent you from sideloading, but most of the time this will just be a check, or they may not use it at all.
Right.
If you have a community of users that are pissed off enough that they can no longer sideload your app, they will just find another app to use that they can. Because this is on the developer to make that decision. Google's not forcing anybody to use it.
That's fair.
And I think what's important here is that this is meant to prevent malware and piracy from permeating Android in a much more like clear-cut way, while also still allowing you to download things from third-party app stores, right? This is only impacting the Play Store. This is not forcing you to use the Play Store. So if you really want to go to the hassle, you can find ways around this. This will be a matter of like, hey, I want to sideload this app. I'm going to find a way to do that. Plus the fact that like if you root your phone, you will be able to disable this in a second. And if you're really into sideloading, you're probably okay with rooting your phone as well. So there will be ways around this, as there always are on Android. I do not think the sky's falling in this particular situation. I actually think this is just Google doing its due diligence and appeasing developers who may not be making nearly as much money on Android as they do on iOS, and trying to be like, look, we want you to continue investing in Android. We want you to spend money developing for our platform. Here are the things that we're doing to ensure that your ad revenue is safe.
Yeah, the piracy argument is I actually almost buy that more than the security one. As silly as that sounds, I can see the benefits to stopping piracy more than, to me, it's like the security apparatus has already been built up enough around sideloading that I don't necessarily think it doesn't. But like, yes, piracy remains a problem on Android, and this does help stop that.
Okay. Let's move on quickly. Flappy Bird is coming back.
End with Flappy Bird.
No,
let's end with Flappy Bird.
We're not ending Flappy Bird. We're ending with RCS.
Okay, we're not ending with Flappy Bird.
But our Flappy Bird is coming back. It's a bad game. Don't buy it. Don't download it. It's going to have crypto in it. I think that's basically all you need to know.
I mean, it's not... Okay, no. It's much more interesting than that. Because
no,
it's not just like... It is! Because it's not... This is not like, oh, the Flappy Bird creators sold out and wanted to, like, make a crypto game 10 years later, like, make a bunch of money. It's a garbage organization waited for the trademark to expire, swooped in, and I do mean that as a pun, took the trademark and then built this new like crypto Flappy Bird game that they're trying to launch, that like prompted the guy who made Flappy Bird a decade ago to like tweet for the first time in 10 years to be like, no, I did not sell anything, and also I don't support crypto.
Right, which is...
It's such a crazy story.
Right, but the story of the guy basically abandoning Flappy Bird at the height of its popularity was the story, right?
Yeah.
He didn't renew the trademark because he didn't want anything to do with the game.
Right.
You know, he did the thing that most capitalists would never choose to do, which is continue to make money from his IP.
Yeah,
he
it's
could have
crazy.
easily continued renewing that trademark and just like lived off some sort of residual income from that from that brand, and he chose not to because of how toxic it became to him. And inevitably more toxic people came in and just stole the IP from him. And I think that is just like the most capitalist thing that could ever have happened, and I'm not surprised. But that's why I don't want to talk about it, because it's ridiculous.
Fine. Don't play it. As much as, look, we all miss Flappy Bird. I miss Flappy Bird.
I hated that game.
That was good. Listen,
I hated that game.
That game was because you were bad at it. It's fine, Daniel. We're not everyone's good at. I was good at it, and you were bad at it, and that's okay. That's a difference we have.
No, the only mobile game that exists is Hold Down. And if you disagree with me, you're wrong. So
I don't even know what this is.
Go play Hold Down, and your life will improve.
All right,
substantially.
$4.
Yes.
Someone sent
spend
me
$4.
a cracked
Spend $4 in every possible market, because I want these kinds of.
Someone sent me a cracked APK. I bet they haven't turned on sideloading. Don't do that. I'm kidding.
Do not let him pirate this game. I want more games from this developer. All right, very, very quickly. iOS 18 got released this week. As a result, RCS got turned on for millions of folks on iOS and on the iPhone. I've started getting a trickle of RCS messages from my friends that I text. I don't text many people because I have them on WhatsApp or Telegram, but the few that I text, 25% of them have RCS enabled already, which is great. Yeah. The GSMA that oversees the universal profile for RCS says that it is working to add encryption. So this is what Apple asked for. It said it's not going to use any sort of modifications to RCS. It's going to just use the universal profile, and it needs to work with the creator, which is the GSMA, to get encryption added to the spec, rather than what Google's doing, which is that it built an extension on top of the universal profile. So your messages to Android users, if you're on iOS, are still not encrypted, but it's okay. It should come in a future update, and Apple will definitely not say anything about it because it doesn't want people to know that. But it's a good thing that it's here. It means you can send higher quality photos and videos. You can get read receipts, tapbacks, all that good stuff. And what should we end with? There will not be a Pixel 10 XL, so we're sorry, Taylor. That is not going to happen.
Taylor really wanted it, or at least wrote a piece about how he wanted it. Yeah, I think this is probably the right call. We've talked about how Apple has struggled to figure out what to do with that fourth iPhone, and it looks like Google is just. I guess Google does have the fourth model. It's just the Fold. Daniel, when does your return window close on the Pixel 9 Pro Fold?
Tomorrow.
What are you doing?
I think I'm going to keep it.
Okay.
I'm going to keep it.
Yeah. I've asked Daniel this like 3 times in the last week, but I figured the pressure of this being a publicly recorded podcast would make him make a decision. Which
next week I'm going to give you my like 3-week review of the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, and it's going to take the entire hour and a half of the show. So just prepare for that. Great.
What else are we going to do next week? It was actually like a quiet news week this week. So as much as I put 1,000 links in here. So yeah, why not? Yeah, that's good. Do we have time for a recommendation, or are we?
Yes, go for it. Very quickly.
I don't know. What's yours?
What's mine?
What's yours?
My wife and I have been watching Love Is Blind UK edition this week, which is absolutely terrible, as all Love Is Blind series are. But this one is slightly better than the other ones, so it's less terrible. Mainly because of the accents. The accents are amazing. And there's one couple in particular that actually seems to like each other. And there's one guy who is so unhinged that I'm worried that he's going to murder his fiance. So I don't usually like this show, but I'm actually kind of into it. My second thing is that I started playing God of War again on PS5, and because I want to finish it before I get to Ragnarok, and I'm obsessed with this game. It's so good.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll do 2. I'll also do a trashy TV thing and then a regular thing. I'm going to recommend the book that you sent me in Slack yesterday, even though I have not read it yet, which is Lost Back to the Island. It came out yesterday. It is and I'm going to quote from the title, the complete critical companion to the classic TV series. Goddamn right, it is a classic TV series. Really, though, like, you sent me this, I think, like, maybe is a bit. I can't tell.
No, I didn't. I care about you, and I want you to enjoy the culture that you've.
And I immediately responded to be like, oh, no, I've known for months this exists because Emily St. James is one of my favorite critics ever, and like I have read her work for like since I was in high school. I'm very excited for this. This is what I'll be reading when I'm like traveling to Snapdragon Summit next month. I'm very excited for it. I've been I don't know if I'm out trashing you on this. Maddie and I have been watching the original Gossip Girl, like not the reboot, but the first one. That show's pretty trashy. I don't know if I'd call it good, but it is deeply entertaining. It is as unhinged as you would expect from a Josh Schwartz teen soap. The OC is undoubtedly a better show, but like I think Gossip Girl has something to offer if you like trashy teen soaps.
Yeah, and you get a young Blake Lively, Leighton Meester.
You do.
And
Yep.
and Chase Crawford.
It didn't get really. I wasn't really into it until oh my god, what is her name? The character's name is Georgina.
Michelle Trachtenberg.
Michelle Trachtenberg shows up and is unhinged. Just like what if the Joker was like a teenage girl? Like she is just like trying to destroy Blake Lively's life in season 1 in a way that I found very, very funny. That show is on Tubi, the app Tubi. So if you love your fast services, go watch it on Tubi.
Who doesn't love their fast services?
That's right.
All right, that's it. We're going to stop there. Thank you so much for listening. If you have feedback, send it to podcast@androidpolice.com. We love hearing from you. We would like to know what trashy TV you're watching these days. It's a good time for it. And Will, I hope you have a great week off. I think I'm going to have to find a replacement.
I'm here next week.
You're next week. Okay.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, then I will see you next week, and we'll find a replacement for you the following week.
Okay. Sounds good to me. I won't be here, so maybe I'll jump on. Maybe I'll just join the Riverside record.
Just won't know. All right, that's it. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.